Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about macronutrients. And so you have three primary macronutrients, or three macronutrients that we'll be talking about, which is proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. And so we'll go over a few key points about each of them. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but we're going to talk about some basics. And so when we look at, so let's look at proteins for an example. We'll say this is a protein. This protein is made up of amino acids. So when you, the building blocks of protein are amino acids. Okay. Now, there are 20 amino acids that make up protein. There are not just 20 amino acids, but there's 20 amino acids that specifically make up protein. We have other amino acids that are used for multiple functions in the body. Okay, so understand there are 20. Out of those 20, 9 of those amino acids are considered essential amino acids. While some textbooks may say 8 because some people can make histidine, most textbooks agree that there's 9 essential amino acids, and so that's what we'll stick with. Okay, essential simply means I need to get them from my diet. The 11 that are non-essential, I can make those, as long as there's no disorder, I can make those from the other amino acids. Okay, so they're non-essential, I don't need to get those from the diet, I can actually manufacture them from other amino acids. So that's pretty much it for protein. There are different structures of protein: primary, secondary, quaternary, and tertiary. And the simple explanation for this is that you've got a long strand of amino acids, right? That's kind of your primary structure. If you fold it over, then you'll get some hydrogen bonding in there, and then you've got this secondary structure that continues to fold into a tertiary structure, and then that continues to fold into a quaternary structure, okay? Which is technically like a globular protein. And so you've got these different levels, and so when we're talking about digesting proteins, we have to break all these hydrogen bonds to unravel or denature the protein, and then we use some enzymes to break those peptide bonds, which the bonds between amino acids are called peptide bonds. All right, so that's protein. Now, let's look at, let's say, carbohydrates. We'll make this carbohydrates. And so carbohydrates, essentially they're made up of monosaccharides, okay? And your monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, and galactose, so your 3 monosaccharides. Now, if I put 2 monosaccharides together, I end up with a disaccharide. So you have a disaccharide called lactose. It's made up of glucose and galactose. You have a monosaccharide called maltose. It's made up of a glucose and another glucose. You have a disaccharide called sucrose. That's your table sugar, and that's made up of a fructose and a glucose. And so knowing those examples, I think tends to be pretty important. Now, if you complex it further, right, you strand more monosaccharides, then you have a polysaccharide. So you got monosaccharides are your building blocks: glucose, fructose, galactose. Okay, those are isomers of each other. They have the same chemical formula, but different structural formula. Okay, so the same chemical formula, but it's arranged differently. Those 3 isomers, iso means same. So those 3 isomers of each other. And if we put them together, we can get our disaccharides. If you have 2, di means 2. And then if we make, string more of them together, then we end up with polysaccharides. And a good example, we can have something like glycogen, which is this complex form of glucose that we store in our skeletal muscles and in our liver. And so that's kind of our focus on carbohydrates, their building blocks called monosaccharides. Then we move into lipids. And so lipids, essentially what's going to happen with a lipid, you have a glycerol backbone, okay? And then you have 3 fatty acid chains that come off of it. This is called a triglyceride. Now we have other types of lipids, phospholipids and steroids, which are synthesized from cholesterol, and then these other chemicals called eicosanoids. We're just going to mention those, but I'm not going to mention those much in this video. What I want to focus on is the structure of the triglyceride, which again is going to be like your dietary fat. You're going to get these triglycerides. We talk about blood tests for triglycerides, things like that. But I want you to know the structure. We're talking kind of in the chemistry form here. And so you've got the glycerol and 3 fatty acid chains. That's a triglyceride, right? 1, 2, 3 fatty acid chains on a glycerol backbone. You will see in the future when we talk about a digestive chapter, we'll talk about how we can break that down and absorb it. And they absorb differently depending on how long the fatty acid chain is. And sometimes we can't break all the fatty acid chains off, and so we end up with a monoglyceride. That's a glycerol with 1 fatty acid chain that we were unable to remove, and it can be absorbed that way. And so Glycerol can be absorbed by itself. Depending on the type of fatty acid chain, it can be absorbed as well. And so that's something for another chapter. But as far as structurally, that's what we focus on. I think that covers a good base of your macronutrients. If you have any questions, let me know. Stay strong. I'll see you next time.